Hey, I hope your day is going well. I wanted to check in and share some interesting data that I've been spending time reviewing, and actually a recent article that I published that highlights some of the key findings from the study. The article I published is called "The Surprising Data Behind Why CEOs with Less Experience Outperform Those with More." In it, I talk about some details outlined in the Harvard Business Review, where an executive recruiting firm, Spencer Stewart, analyzed over 800 top executives who held the CEO role primarily in S&P 500 companies, which is the leading stock market index. The findings from that study yielded kind of two really interesting points. So the first, executives who held the role for the first time actually achieved a higher return for company shareholders compared to more experienced ones. It's also included they had stock prices that were less volatile than their counterparts. The second point was for CEOs who held that same role in back-to-back companies. 70% of those found better success or more success in their first company, and more than half of those studied the second go around led to results that were lower. So I think it's really interesting. Ultimately, this is counterintuitive to many of the things that either we're taught in business school or we hear that experience is everything. While there's obviously a lot of validity to experience, the CEO role show that typically you're not always going to get the exact same results that you would expect from those with more experience compared to those with less. But let's talk about why. There were some interesting reasons why. So first and foremost, more experienced CEOs were brought in more often to situations where companies were struggling and needed to be turned around. So they were innately faced with an uphill battle, which understandably makes it much more challenging to find success compared to rookie CEOs who might be leading younger companies or companies with less challenges. Another interesting component was that rookie CEOs tended to be more flexible and adaptable to situations where more experienced CEOs leaned on the playbooks that they've leaned on for many years, which oftentimes might be outdated, right? And these are things like focusing on reducing costs and some of the mentalities that don't always serve companies well in the modern era. In this study, they highlight really some interesting points. I really would suggest not only dig into my Forbes article, but also the linked Harvard Business Review article. The last thing I want to hit on, which I think is a really important concept that yielded from the study, was as boards of directors, who are typically the people responsible for selecting CEOs, as they think through how to improve their process of selecting CEOs, it's important that they're mindful of all the considerations that go in, right? When you have that revolving door of more experienced CEOs, you also have to be mindful that it often comes at the expense of diversity. We already know that, typically CEOs of publicly traded companies, they tend to be monolithic from a demographic standpoint, and that's creates challenges in its own right. So as we think of not only knowing that rookie CEOs can oftentimes perform better, it's also important to realize that bringing in rookie CEOs often means that they're going to be faces and folks that don't necessarily reflect that of the old guard. So there's a lot of benefits there. At the end of the day, we know that all companies need to look at what's best for them, but I do think this data that's listed is really interesting and worth diving into. Would love for you to take a look and give me some feedback. Give me a shout on my socials after you've read through. Would love to hear what you think and what you learned. Talk soon.